Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana, your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Yo, what's going on?
Not much, man. Dragging ass. Had trouble getting started today. It's just one of those days.
Yeah, my coffee cup is empty over here, and I'm kind of sad about it because, you ever have those days where you drink a couple cups of coffee and it's just like nothing happens?
It falls flat. Yeah. That's today. That's today, dude.
Like somehow caffeine has this interesting property where it seems like you can drink the same amount every day and still get the same effect, right? It's not like heroin, right, where you need more and more,
right?
Or so I am told.
From experience.
But but today, so there's these mysterious days where whatever 300 milligrams or whatever, however much I had in these couple of cups of coffee, man, it is just doing nothing.
Yeah, I think I had about 2 cups as well. That's a warm up for me.
Just getting the blood moving.
Yeah, I have ADHD, and I've had a physician and a psychologist both tell me that coffee is an acceptable substitute for Adderall
or amphetamines.
Amphetamines, yeah, basically.
Yeah,
quasi-meth. Yeah, I've never liked that shit, so I just drink a lot of coffee in the morning and a lot of coffee in the afternoon. I knock right out. That's like a tall tale sign of ADHD too, if you can drink coffee and go to bed.
Right, yeah, because I have still a lot of people check their coffee intake if they're like not going to sleep or they're just wide ass awake at midnight.
Yeah,
but it turns out they had a cup of coffee at like 4 p.m. You're like, well, the half life of caffeine is pretty long. I'm sure it varies a lot from person to person, but last I looked, it's something like 6 or 7 hours or something like that.
Yep,
several hours. So. Well, speaking of caffeine, I think today you wanted to talk about supplements, right?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get into that because I realized we probably mentioned them in passing, but I don't think we've done an episode on them. And we're just going to speak broadly, probably keep it short. Definitely not going to go into a deep dive into the literature. That's not what we do here. We might sometimes, certain paper comes out, but more just the practical applicability of taking these things, because they're popular. I don't know how popular they are now because I used to learn about them in magazines, and I don't know that people read magazines anymore. And I don't see a ton of supplements on my social media feed, not to the extent that I used to see in magazines where it was just everywhere,
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I've told my story in previous episodes about the, I bought some whey protein at the GNC, and I got the DVDs with the the special bodybuilding workout. It's going to add an inch to your arms in 24 hours. Yeah, it was basically drink half a tub of Celtec. I don't know. I'm the same way. It's the way that the algorithm has curated my Instagram and YouTube feeds. I see plenty of strength sports. My Instagram feed is the most boring shit ever because it's just a bunch of people squatting and benching. Just page after page after page. But even on YouTube, I follow a lot of strongman competitions and so Halfthor and Brian Shaw and all these guys. Yeah. And it's not a whole lot of supplement. However, I will say, I keep running into these internet personalities that I later find out made a ton of money selling supplements. So clearly people are still buying a shitload of these.
Oh, yeah. I see a lot of ads for apps, AIs and things like that,
Yeah, like diet apps and stuff.
Yeah,
calorie trackers.
I see stuff like that popping up a lot. But I know the supplement industry is not doing bad at all. So they're selling them somewhere, I don't see it like I used to.
Yeah.
But back in our day, we used to open up these magazines, Men's Fitness, Men's Health, Muscular Development, Muscle and Fitness. Those two were really bad with it.
Right.
And, every other page was, some supplement that was going to make you gain lean mass in 3 months, 2 to 3 months. And you kind of go down this rabbit hole and you become this expert at, various dietary manipulations and, supplement regimens. I knew at one point, when I was 18, my friend, he had like one of those pill containers they sold at the vitamin shop, and then
right.
here's my multivitamins, my BCAAs, my NO Explode or whatever, Then he was taking
fish oil and
all this stuff, and then we were weak as piss, We were weak as piss. Because the guy at our vitamin shop wasn't quite as honest as your guy that said, hey, you need steroids for that, brother.
Yeah, that guy did me a solid. He set me on the right path.
Yeah, you didn't waste your time. You know, my buddy took a bunch of different things. Let's see, what did I actually experiment? I was cheap, so I didn't want to buy the expensive ones. So like back then, pro hormones were legal.
Oh,
but
yes, yeah.
But a bottle of them at Vitamin Shop was called VPX used to make them. I think they're still in business. And they would name them after actual steroids. So they had, let's see if I remember, they had Paradeca, one test.
I remember one test.
Yeah, one test, Paradeca, Decavar, and I don't remember what the other ones were.
There was a Trenbolone one I've heard about. Yeah.
And they give it to you in droppers, so it looks like a syringe. They wanted it to look as much like actual steroids as possible, and that stuff actually worked because they were precursors, right?
Yeah.
Then that all got banned in 2004 after the ephedra scandal. They just decided to throw pro hormones into the mix there, but I didn't want to pay for that. They were all like $100, and I think they only lasted like a month. Like I was 18 and I had money for that.
Yeah, and who knows how much testosterone or whatever those actually metabolized into versus
I have no idea. I know every guy I know that took that one test, they got big really fast.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about the other ones. I remember that one though. But so I think I took multivitamins on and off between ages 18 and 21 probably. And I took whey protein periodically throughout the years. I messed around with casein, protein. I think I took free-form BCAAs because they're supposed to be better.
Yeah, right. Yep. I went through 18, a phase.
19.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, those things are nasty. They're so bad. Like I could never find a brand that actually mixed up well. Yeah. Horrendous.
Oh, and I'm mixing up two different supplements. So no, BCAAs I took briefly in 2014. The guy I was working with was big on them, and I like the flavor. I think Extends, was it called? Sounds like a fucking erection pill, but do you remember that one?
Yes, I do remember those. Yeah. Well, I think the thing was about the flavor with those is I bought some of those once, and I remember it being really strong. I mean, I got watermelon or whatever, and it was just like full face punch of watermelon. And I think they have to do that to cover up the bitterness. Because there are some lighter flavored BCAAs I've bought from other companies, and man, that stuff is just super bitter because it would never mix right in water. And you get a little bit of that powder on your tongue. Woo! Mm-hmm. Brutal.
I don't know which one. I took the purple one. I think it was blue raspberry.
Yeah.
I took that, but no, years ago when I was 18, they had this pill container and it had capsules, and they were amino acids, but then they were like quote unquote free form. So it was like multiple it was like had a bunch of essential amino acids, they called them. Yeah.
Okay.
EAAs,
Yeah. Right.
And they were free form, and I took those. So I'm like, I'll absorb more of them, So I'm like learning all this, like, some little bit of biochemistry, I guess would probably be the right word for it. And then I just become a master of all this diet stuff, dietary manipulation. Kind of new supplement. I think I took one of the nitric oxide ones at one point. Was it NO Explode or whatever that was?
Yeah, that was super popular.
No, I took NOX too. By the time NO Explode came out, I had given up on that shit. I tried the creatine. I think I took monohydrate. Then I definitely took the, not hydrochloride, what was it? Ethyl ester, because I read it in a magazine in 2003, and it's like, this is supposed to be better. And
right. Absorbs better or whatever.
Yeah, it said something about less water retention. I won't bloat, but you have to retain water for it to fucking work, So anyways, I played around with all that silly stuff. And none of it worked because I wasn't training, So I'm trying all this stuff out. I'm fucking around with diet, and then I just wasn't training correctly. I wasn't deadlifting, I wasn't pressing, and I wasn't really adding weight to the bar on the isolation stuff. So, basically the same result every time. I'd get fat, my chest, back, and legs would grow because I squat, benched, and did pull-ups, and then everything else would just not move. And biggest thing I got later on was I pressed, I deadlifted, and I, got stronger at all of it. And I've continued to grow throughout the years. And in the last year, I've started doing single joint stuff, and I've added a little bit each time, and I've grown from that. Developed some golfer's elbow that I'm working through now, so my little arm quest is, kind of on hold. But we're getting through it. Basically gonna have to train that more intermediate, probably hit it a little heavier every other week.
In my experience, tendonitis is one of those things, like once you fix the thing that was lighting it up, it takes a few weeks for the itis to fully kind of dissipate. And then
that's how I feel.
And then you get these little like twinges that'll like pop up like one workout and then it'll go away pretty fast. But yeah, it's a long tail of getting that out of your system. It sucks.
Yeah, I can't lock out my arms when I curl. I think that's what caused it. I was locking the elbow out.
That terminal range of motion there. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to use my shoulder to get it moving. If you try to like do complete isolation elbow flexion without any shoulder flexion, it's going to light you up.
Yeah, for sure.
I was watching Mike Israetel this morning, and he was going all the way down, but then you see a little shoulder raise there to get it moving,
Yeah, just to get it going.
Yeah, so I need to modify that. I was trying to go purely just moving my forearm, and it just wrecked my elbow over time. So I got away with it for a while because it wasn't heavy. Then when it got heavy, and I'm curling 50s and curling over 100, 40s, 40 plus, like 43, I think, on the preacher curl, that was enough to light it up.
For sure.
So, I'm working through that. But anyhow, supplements. None of that shit worked, and it kind of diverts your attention to the wrong things, right? So, you got a hierarchy, right? So, number one, you have to train. You have to train, and you have to train correctly. You got to do your big lifts. You have to try to add weight. You have to try to get stronger. I don't want to hear this hypertrophy shit. We're not advanced bodybuilders here, okay? Yeah. And even they got to get stronger.
That's right.
They're lifting a lot more weight than you are. We've hammered this point to hell. But your foundation is your training program. That's the first thing you have to get sorted out. You have to put together a rational program that's going to get you stronger and build muscle. Once you have that, the next thing is you have to eat to facilitate that. We've talked about this. You have to get enough protein in. If you can't get enough protein in, a protein supplement can be useful.
Sure. Yeah.
But, it's a basics. That's a food supplement, Yeah. We're hoping that what's in it is in it because it's a supplement. It's not regulated, but regulation doesn't make anything any better. It's not like the food you buy, by the way, people who think, oh, the FDA should regulate supplements like they regulate food. The food you buy, they don't fucking analyze that for calories and macronutrients and micronutrients. They did that maybe 100 years ago, and they're extrapolating. So that's not any more accurate than a food supplement. You are trusting the food company to provide you with macros that are on there, plus or minus.
And how many times have we run into situations where, there'll be some legal action and we find out after the fact, like, oh yeah, well, they actually were using a bunch of this stuff that's now illegal in the food, so they got to change. Like I remember trans fats being one of those things, right? I don't know if they were listed in the ingredients or not, but I fully believe that with a lot of processed food, what you actually see on the label in the back is probably not everything that's actually in there. Or they cover it up, with like and artificial flavors or whatever.
That's right. But I digress. So you need enough protein, you need enough carbs, and if you don't want to become a big fat ass, you got to watch your fat intake. I mean, for all you keto guys, sorry, you need a lot of carbs, and if you eat a lot of carbs and you eat a lot of protein, it doesn't leave room for a lot of fat. But that does not mean very low fat. We've hammered that to hell too.
Yeah, right.
Next thing on the list, okay, what is your lifestyle like? And that's a broad category, right? So we start with sleep. Are you sleeping enough?
Yeah.
Are you stressed out at work? Are you stressed out at home? Are you doing drugs? Are you smoking cigarettes? Are you drinking? All these things factor in. You got to go down the list, and see what you can and can't address. Then once you're kind of weeded through all that and figured out how to best optimize all those things, because they're not going to be perfect. We're humans. We have lives, No, we're not. There's some of you out there are not going to drink 0 drinks. I don't drink 0 drinks. And some of you out there aren't going to sleep 9 hours every night. I don't. So, you try to fine tune those things to the best extent that you can. Then you can start looking at things like supplements, right? But then when you look at that, okay, what works, what doesn't, right? Well, we've talked about protein, which is a food supplement I would consider. You're getting more of a macronutrient without having to prepare a bunch of meat or keep a bunch of dairy products refrigerated. It's convenient, so we start there. That's easy. It supplements your diet, right? That's what it's supposed to do. Then next one, creatine's a popular one. Lots of research on that, and it passes the smell test. I just had a girl start taking it, and her bench skyrocketed. I can't think of any other variable that influenced that, Her other lifts, which were far more advanced on the adaptation curve than the bench press, have been pretty much the same, maybe a little bit lower, but motivation's a factor there too. And, she's leaner and she's benching more. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, it's probably the fact that she's taking creatine consistently,
Yeah.
Does help with these things,
Yeah.
The quote unquote scientists are saying so, and the bro scientists are saying so, and we're seeing it before our eyes. So
yeah, it checks out. Interestingly, I'd been taking creatine pretty consistently for the last, 3 or 4 years at least, and I stopped, a few months ago. I can't remember when exactly it is that I stopped taking it. And I just kind of decided, I'm like, well, I'm not training that hard. I'm not doing a lot of volume of work in any given workout. So I don't feel like taking this anymore. And I've kind of noticed since then, I've had consistent trouble with my eights on, particularly on the upper body lifts. And it's it feels like it's not 100% a strength issue. It feels like I'm just like a lot of times, usually on the second or third set when I'm doing eights, I'll just run out of gas on like rep 8. Whereas before, the last, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, when I was doing eights, I'd usually have plenty of gas, right? If I ran into a weight that I just couldn't lift anymore, it would look more like 6, 6, 5 or something, right? As opposed to 8, 7, 6. From set to set. And so I kind of wonder if that's really, that's the creatine effect. It would certainly make sense, right? That if you have a little bit extra creatine phosphate on board in your muscle cells, then you can just get that little bit of extra juice, right? A little bit of extra ATP available to rep out, another rep, maybe another 2 reps in a set.
Yep. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So, if all the other factors are met, then by all means, so just make sure it's monohydrate. All the other ones are mostly bullshit.
Yeah, it's cheap. It's super cheap, too.
It's cheap, yeah. Next, multivitamins. This was considered a basic when I go into every supplement shop. Oh, your basics are multivitamins and amino acids. Well, you're getting amino acids if you're eating a lot of protein, but, I digress.
Yeah, right.
Multivitamins. So here's my position on multivitamins because, the GNC guys and the bros will say you need them, because you're not getting enough from food. You need more because you're lifting. So, on one side of the argument, you have your GNC guy, your bro scientists, whatever you want to call them, your gym bros, that will say you need vitamins. Then on the other end, you have the dietetic people saying, oh, you can get it from food. Okay, that's an academic response, by the way, because sure, theoretically, you can get it from food.
Right.
But, there's a practical problem with that. Number one, there are various environmental factors that can influence the amount of vitamin you can extract from a food. So, I'm not going to go into each and every vitamin. I'll be writing about this soon, and you can refer to that, or you can pull out a nutritional biochemistry book, but things such as heat, cold, light, that can affect how much of a vitamin you get out of a food. So the label may say it has X amount, and then you're not actually getting that amount. Oxygen, so the air you're breathing, for a long time, and maybe they're probably still doing it today, as far as I know, orange juice has been promoted as this great source of vitamin C, okay? The problem is when that orange juice hits the air, the oxygen oxidizes the ascorbic acid, and you lose a lot of it. You don't take in as much. My professor that taught me this said that if you want to use oranges or orange juice as a source of vitamin C, get the frozen concentrate. So, red bell pepper is a better source. It's higher in vitamin C than oranges. and you'll get a lot more of it. But, these are just some examples. Or look at your milk container, random fact. You notice that it is opaque. That is to keep the light from hitting the milk, because the light can destroy the riboflavin, which is your B2, vitamin B2. So, those are a couple obvious examples we see every day. But that's why milk containers are opaque.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then, you got... Then the way you cook things and prepare them, right? You apply heat, you can lose some vitamins from the food if you apply heat, if you're cooking.
Sure.
So, taking all these factors into consideration, if you try to achieve these numbers, many of which, not all, but many of which aren't necessarily amounts that we know we need. So some vitamins have a recommended daily allowance, which is based on research throughout the years, yada, yada, yada. Then some have what's called an adequate intake, that, this should be enough and won't be harmful, right?
Yeah.
So the amounts that the government thinks we need are already unclear. But let's assume these amounts are sufficient, because we did have deficiency problems in the early 20th century that were corrected by taking in more vitamins. We had beriberi, pellagra, these are B vitamin deficiencies. We had neural tube defects due to folic acid deficiency. And the government decided to enrich grains with B vitamins. And we haven't had these deficiency problems since. So it's pretty clear that this helps, and it's also clear that when food was less mass-produced and we were eating fresher things, while that was good in a lot of ways, we lost out on a few things, probably because of logistics, if you think about it, and also knowledge. We didn't know that certain things were in certain foods naturally,
Right.
But as you can see, it's like a crazy game of Tetris when you're trying to get all these little micronutrients in, right? That's not to say that you can't get plenty of them in eating a well-balanced diet, because I don't take vitamins now. I'm just real shitty at taking things.
Right.
And I feel fine, and I eat a variety of different foods. I eat a lot of fruits, vegetables, oats, lots of meat, and things like that. If you're a vegan, you'd probably need more. Not probably, you need to supplement some vitamins, especially B12, iron,
Yeah, right. For sure.
Now we're talking about minerals, right? So they're two different things. Your vitamins and you have your minerals, right? I don't think a lot of people need to supplement minerals, but I think vegetarians and vegans probably do. So as you can see, trying to optimize your micronutrient intake through food can be a challenge. It's, to the point where, we've had to enrich and fortify foods with them, right? Some people might argue that we didn't have to, but, and that's one of those things where it passes the smell test. We had all these deficiencies back in the day. We don't have them now. We have other problems now that come from mass food production. That's just not one of them. People aren't, getting beriberi and pellagra at high rates here in the States. We have fewer cases of neural tube defects,
Yeah.
So, everything's trade-offs. No system's perfect. And I generally don't want government getting involved in a lot of things. And I don't know that enriching grains was necessarily the best way to deliver it, but it got the job done because we eat a lot of grains here, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it at that. So now, fast forward. Up to this point, I'm talking about vitamins for people that aren't lifting, because that's what a lot of that is based off of, right? Now you start lifting. So this whole thing that, you need more. This is what GNC says. Dietitians say, get it from food. They're both correct. Most of your B vitamins specifically are involved in energy production and central nervous system function. If you go down the list, that's the common denominator. You're either using them for biochemical reactions involved in energy production, or you're using them for your central nervous system to function one way or another. And this will all be covered in a little bit more detail in my article, while keeping it practical. So if you are producing more energy because you're doing a more vigorous form of activity, you're probably going to need more B vitamins to do that. And for you dietetic people, don't turn off the podcast yet, because I'm going somewhere with this that you'll probably agree with. So yeah, you're producing more energy because you're lifting. You're lifting something heavy. You're producing more energy than a sedentary person, so you're probably going to need more B vitamins, right? Number two, lifting specifically, even more so than aerobic, because it's so high in intensity, you are engaging. That's not the word I want to use. Because it's so high in intensity, you're lifting something heavy. You are recruiting your central nervous system to a far greater extent than doing something that's repetitive, light, continuous, right? So if you have more central nervous system activation, I mean, it's always working, by the way. You'd be dead if it wasn't. But obviously you have to recruit more motor units, which means more CNS activity when you are lifting something heavy. So if you are doing that, if you are recruiting more motor units and having more CNS activity above baseline, then you would expect that, okay, you probably need more B vitamins, right? And, it goes down the list, right? You got your macro minerals, right? Your sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, right? Sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, they're all involved, again, energy production, right? Certain reactions require those. So therefore, maybe you need a little bit more. The question is, how do you get it, right? So the dietitian in me will say, well, you also need more calories to lift weights. And if you are eating more of the same foods that you eat on a well-balanced diet, you are getting more vitamins and minerals. So do you need to supplement? Well, that goes back to the Tetris thing, right? Probably the point is it can't hurt, right? Now, some things, so like I said, they're both right. The GNC guy's right because, if you're on the same calorie level and you're going to try and lift, you're going to demand more of everything, first of all, so you should be raising your calories, but you're going to need more of these vitamins most likely. Do we have, a p-value or a peer-reviewed study to, justify this? Probably not. I think the data on this that's available suggests that supplementing vitamins makes no difference in performance, but, it's hard to control because calorie intake is probably going up when people are performing at a higher level, which means vitamin intake is going up independent of the supplement, right? Especially if you're eating a good diet.
Right.
So they're both right. You do need more, but you also need more macronutrients. So if you're eating more macronutrients, you're also getting more micronutrients. Now, I'm a diet guy. I eat, for the most part, how I tell people they should eat. But most people don't eat that way. We got plenty of data on that. Anecdotal, quote-unquote scientific, epidemiological. It's pretty clear that, we have pretty shitty diet
Yes.
in this country, and it's starting to spread to other countries as far as I know. So, when I'm talking to the guy that's like, I want to eat ribeyes and drink whiskey all day and do keto, okay, do you think he's getting all his vitamins? Probably not. Or let's just take the average Joe on the street that, skips breakfast, gets fast food for lunch, and then, eats a bag of chips for dinner and maybe a case of Coke, For you Texans out there, I just learned it is all called Coke in Texas, right?
That's right.
Trent?
Oh, yeah. It's all Coke. And then you specify what you want. And if you don't ask, if somebody, if you don't specify, if they're like, hey, you want a Coke with that?
Yeah.
They assume you mean Dr. Pepper, unless you say otherwise. Like, oh, no, I want a Sprite. Oh, okay. I gotcha. But it's all Coke.
I just learned this from a client a month ago from Texas. He's I talked about the case of Coke. He's like, why Rip calls it Coke, right? It's because in Texas, it's all Coke.
Yeah, everything's Coke. And you also got to be fixing to.
Fixing to.
Like, I'm not about to go to the gym. I'm fixing to.
I'm fixing to go to the gym. My stepdad talked like that.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. But, if you're the average guy that skips breakfast, eats fast food, drinks a case of Coke, and eats a bag of chips, you're not getting your vitamins. And then you start lifting, and, okay, you're taking protein shakes now, and, maybe eating a couple steaks a day. It's gotten better. You're getting more B12. You're getting some more zinc, but you're probably not getting all your vitamins. Or let's say that you're a meat and potatoes guy and you're doing that, right? Okay, you're getting plenty of potassium. I think everybody's accidentally getting plenty of sodium. I don't think we really need to supplement that unless you're working out first thing in the morning and, you want an electrolyte beverage. But, you're a meat potatoes guy. You eat a fair diet, but you're skipping your vegetables. You're like Carl Shute, not eating a fruit. Yeah, I'm calling you out. Hope you're listening. I've been shaming him for 7 years about not eating a fruit. He's going to die and never have a fruit, I'm telling you. But, we have this running thing now. He will not eat fruit. So, he probably needs a multivitamin because he's not eating any fucking fruit. And I don't know how his vegetable intake is either. He's strong as fuck, though.
Yeah, right.
So that's my point, right? Are many people, let's just be honest with ourselves, even you listening, are you really eating a well-balanced diet? I mean, I don't even think I'm eating a totally well-balanced diet. Sometimes I go through phases where I don't eat fruit and I'm eating fucking Halo Top because I have a freaking sweet tooth and want some more chocolate in my diet. Then I circle back to fruit because I'm like, I can't live off diet ice cream. This is silly, But, it changes. My carb sources change. And that's, a lot of your vitamins come from a lot of different places, but it's usually in the carb source where people, tend to miss out on some things. Like if you can get somebody to eat enough protein, they're probably going to get enough iron, enough thiamine, enough B12 and whatnot if they're eating animal proteins, B2 if they're drinking dairy. But then when you get to the carb sources, fruits and vegetables get skipped. There's a lot of vitamins there that you're not going to get elsewhere, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can get a lot with starchy vegetables mixed in your ground beef or whatever that you're eating.
Absolutely.
But yeah, a lot of people aren't doing that.
No. So, that's my point. A multivitamin is it's harmless. I wouldn't supplement. I wouldn't go high on the individual fat soluble vitamins. That vitamin K, you excrete a lot of that, but like vitamin A, D, and E, you don't really excrete that. It can build up, and you can get some symptoms of toxicity. I know people personally that have gotten vitamin D toxicity. That's another one to bring up. A lot of us aren't sitting out in the sun all day,
Right.
Or we're in a state that doesn't get a lot of sunlight,
Yeah, exactly.
So vitamin D supplementation I highly recommend that, if you can stick with it.
Yeah. Now that one is fat soluble though, right? Vitamin
it is,
D.
yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So it will build up.
Yeah. You could get symptoms of hypervitaminosis D if you take too much of it. So you don't want to take it in crazy high doses. You get your levels checked every so often. You'll start to feel funny. But I know a friend of mine, her husband was low, and she's a dietitian. She got him on vitamin D. And whatchamacallit, he went back, his levels were like 90, and I think, 30 is the low end of the cut point, And she had to back the dosage off because he was starting to, get some of those symptoms. So yeah, you want to kind of be careful. I think it's 1,000 to 2,000 IUs are usually pretty good.
Yeah, that's normally what I do. Like especially in the winter months. I think it's like I'll take like a couple thousand a day, maybe. But it seems like I wonder if the people that you've run into that have had this problem take like because I've seen some recommendations sometimes where people are like, you got to hammer that stuff like 10,000, 20,000 a day.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. Well, there's a couple ways it's administered. There's D2 and D3, so it's ergocalciferol. That's usually found in plant products like shiitake mushrooms. That's a natural. I get a lot of vitamin D because I eat a lot of shiitake mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And then there's cholecalciferol, which is what you get from the sun. And I've seen doctors prescribe D2 ergocalciferol 50,000 units once a week, and the absorption is different. So they just take it once a week, and that's it. With the cholecalciferol, you take it every day. And the thing people tend to know, with my friend, her husband noticed bone pain. So that was a symptom that he got. There's other symptoms, but that's one that's pretty common.
Okay, yeah.
So then you got other things, right? So like women, premenopausal women, you are bleeding once a month. And when you bleed, you lose iron. So iron supplement is probably good if you're a premenopausal female that's still having a regular menstrual cycle. On the flip side, if you're male, we are not bleeding unless, we're getting shot and like getting into gunfights and shit,
right.
Getting stabbed, whatever. So a lot of that iron builds up. We don't excrete much of it, and that can lead to various types of cancers later in life. It builds up in the colon. So it's advised that, men give blood once a year or something like that to get rid of those iron stores. Calcium, a lot of women are at risk of osteoporosis. And I know today, especially because I work with a lot of female clients, there's a lot of females that won't drink dairy for various reasons, and sometimes it's, a good choice. Sometimes it's weird shit that's been read on the internet, but, dairy is very high in calcium. It's not that there's not calcium in other food sources, just not that concentrated of an amount. So a calcium supplement can be useful. I've had people taking magnesium that helps them sleep,
Sure. Yeah.
So, these things are all practically useful. These are practically useful reasons to take these things. Once you start getting into all these, quote unquote performance enhancing supplements, and I'm not talking about steroids, I'm talking about supplements that people say will enhance your performance. I think a lot of it's bullshit. But, if you want to try stuff and it's harmless, you might get a placebo effect out of it. I mean, that counts for something,
Right. Yeah.
If you want to spend your money on it and you've looked through the risks and you haven't, heard of anybody having something crazy happen and, seems fine, try it out, see, report back to us. I'm not saying that this stuff 100% doesn't work. You just haven't seen anything work anywhere near the extent actual steroids work, right? So,
right.
Why the fuck are you going to take this shit and waste your money for an immeasurable result, right? So what we're talking about here today are things that, you could pretty much see, right? Like, okay, I'm eating meat and potatoes 3 times a day. I'm not touching a fruit or vegetable. I'm going to take a vitamin. And, oh, shit, I feel a little bit better,
Yeah, right.
And that happens, that happens. Just like I get the keto guys to eat more carbs and they feel a little bit better, right? Or, I have low energy and, you're a female. You start taking iron. Oh, I feel much better. I had recently, as recent as last month, I had a female telling me she was getting constipated, taking an iron supplement. And I recommended her pair it with vitamin C supplement because you can absorb the iron better if you take vitamin C.
Yeah.
And, she felt better and was not constipated anymore, So, there are practical reasons to take some of these things. But, once you get into the silly stuff, okay, you want to take a nitric oxide supplement because you like how big your arms get temporarily after a workout, then go ahead. It looks cool. You can take pictures for Instagram. If you're a gym trainer, some people like to see that,
Right.
I've never done it. Maybe I should because I'm trying to train arms, So
some people like that beta alanine, they get the little tinglies in their face and,
Yeah, exactly.
they get all flushed and
yeah. So, there's, I don't think I've left any out that really need to be touched on.
Yeah, there's a whole list. There's a whole litany of sort of like esoteric kind of stuff like
it's endless.
Yeah, beta alanine, HMB, citrulline malate or malate, however you say that.
Yeah.
It's stuff you would find in if you grab, I guess the big thing that I hear about still today is that we didn't call it this, or at least, nobody in high school called it this, pre-workout. Pre-workout is pretty popular now because people be like, what do you use for pre-workout? What's your pre-workout?
Right.
And, everybody's got their formulation that they like. And it has like all this, shit in it. But it, like you said, there's a placebo effect for sure with some of it. But also,
of course.
Frankly, I think the thing that I see about pre-workout, the reason why you think it makes you better in the gym is because it has a bunch of caffeine in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I think caffeine is the best. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. We were joking, but I think that's the one that we've left out that's performance enhancing is caffeine is an ergogenic. It's a great stimulant. It's great at stimulating the central nervous system and preparing you to lift heavy, and it works.
That's the word, ergogenic aid. I forgot about that word.
Yeah, and I've kind of noticed, personally, if I drink. I forget what the upper limit of caffeine is, in general, but it's pretty high. Like I want to say like 500 or 600 milligrams.
I think it's 500 or 600.
Yeah.
I'm probably way past that.
Yeah, which most people a weak cup of coffee. Like if you're getting like the Keurig cup of coffee, I would bet that has less than 100 milligrams per cup in it.
I would gamble that.
Now we make here at the Jones household, we make we do pour overs, right? So we have been using a Chemex lately. So we grind our own coffee beans and, we do the Chemex. That is definitely, it's stronger coffee by a good bit. So yeah. I would bet a cup of coffee for us has, 100, 120 milligrams of caffeine. So, you could theoretically drink 4 or 5 or 6 cups of that and, reach somewhere near the max benefit you'd ever get from it. I know I would be just like, I'd be like picking my skin off at that point. I'd be so jittery.
Right.
But when I go in and train, especially when I squat or deadlift really heavy, then it kind of soaks up the caffeine, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I notice it like it it doesn't seem to affect me after the workout as much as it would be if I hadn't worked out. So,
Right.
that's a useful one. But I that's what I think about all these pre-workouts is like, it's not any of the other shit that they put in there. It's just the caffeine.
No.
You just got a huge
No.
hit of caffeine and you feel great. You think the workout goes well. It probably did go better because of the
Yeah,
stimulant.
I don't even consider that. Yeah, no, caffeine. I have to drink a hot cup of coffee when I'm lifting, and
Sure.
it's fantastic. I love a hot cup of coffee when I'm lifting.
Same here.
I drink it black.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? You don't have to have a pre-workout to get caffeine in. You can just drink coffee.
Yeah. They used to say it's false energy. I don't know. It's pretty fucking real when it's happening, but I get what they mean, right? You still got to you got to eat a well-balanced diet, And
Yeah.
Again, this is a supplement. You're supplementing baseline. Baseline
Sure.
is you want to get enough carbs, enough protein, and a variety of different sources of each. So as you brought up caffeine, I was thinking about fat burners. I don't know if those are still a thing, but
Well, they banned ephedrine, right?
yeah, you got to pay attention to what they did. They banned ephedra.
Ephedra. Okay.
Because ephedra is the supplement term for it's an herb, right? So
Okay.
ephedra is an herb. But ephedrine is what they extract from ephedra. So they just want to make sure you're buying the drug and not the supplement.
yeah, of course.
Such a scam. Such a fucking scam, man. I remember that. They're like, we banned ephedra, but you could still get the active ingredient, but the active ingredient's in a product that's regulated by the FDA,
Yeah.
So I digress. But yeah, basically, fat burners that work are stimulants in a nutshell, right? Caffeine is considered a quote-unquote fat burner because it's thermogenic. It raises your body temperature, raises your heart rate. Back in the day, they used to do ephedra or ephedrine, either one. Ephedrine is a drug. Ephedra is an herb. And ephedra is banned. Ephedrine is still available, as far as I know, unless that got banned too. I don't think it did. But both of them effectively, are stimulants. They elevate your heart rate, blood pressure, etc. I don't get much of a blood pressure response from caffeine. Mine's still low, but some people do. But it was ephedra, caffeine, and aspirin. And then later on, I saw guys putting yohimbine in there, which is supposedly a libido supplement. I don't think it did anything for that, but apparently it had some thermogenic properties too. Either way, most people don't need to take a fat burner supplement. Where would this apply? This would apply if you are trying to get sickly fucking ripped for a bodybuilding show, in which case you're doing a bunch of other unhealthy shit too. And the fat burner is probably the least of your problems. But in order for that to even work to begin with, you have to have a calorie restriction. And typically people will start, the smarter ones, the smarter physique competitors will wait till the last minute to take that stuff. And they'll get to a point where, I can't eat any less than this. I can't mentally or physically do it. And then they'll start taking fat burners and probably other shit too, let's be honest.
Yeah, right.
But the average person who's lifting weights and, just needing to lose, like the guy who hires me and says, I don't want to have a big belly. That guy doesn't need to take fat burners, Most people don't need to take fat burners. When we're talking about shit like that, now we are talking about sport. And that's an entirely different animal. If you're not even sport. Now we're talking about a contest, right? And contests and sports alike, people will push themselves to win, and they will take risks to win. They will take risks with their bodies to win. But, if you're looking at longevity and health, you can't keep taking fat burners forever and jacking up your heart rate, so it's not very good for that purpose. Out of all those supplements I listed, caffeine is the only one I really take. I don't like. That's why I don't take Adderall, because Adderall got my blood pressure up, got my heart rate up. So I never took it consistently. I tried it a couple times, prescribed by the doctor. And I didn't take it. And for those of you who don't know, I've been ADHD before it was fashionable. I was first diagnosed in 1992. They didn't even have an H back then. It was just ADD.
You're such a hipster.
Yeah.
I was ADHD before it was cool.
Yeah, it was before it was cool. I'm a purist. Yeah, anyways. But, I take caffeine. I don't like shit that gets my blood pressure and heart rate up. So, those things work in the context of other shit, right? You have to be in a calorie restriction and working out to get the most out of something like that. But most of you don't need to take that. Most of you don't need to take that. I am pro caffeine, though. I'm definitely pro caffeine.
Yep.
Then the next tier up is steroids. That's considered a supplement in other countries. And on this podcast, I shit on them all the time because people have, gotten real good at using steroids and claim they're real good at training people. And they're not real good at training people. They're just good at using drugs. In a lot of cases. They're the most dangerous coaches out there, and they are all over the damn industry. It's different. It's a different ballgame. I was talking to a guy yesterday. Somebody probably knows this. I don't read steroid literature, but one guy was saying that no working out and just getting on testosterone, 7% increase in muscle mass, with no working out.
Yeah.
I think with working out, it was like 10 to 15% or something is the number he threw at me. I didn't fact check or verify this, but it sounds about right.
Well, and I'm sure like just like training, you have high responders and low responders,
and adverse responders.
And adverse responders, right.
Yeah.
I was rereading Dante Trudell's Cycling for Pennies article.
It's great.
There's a bunch of different versions out there, but he actually has one. I'll link it in the show notes. He's got a version that he edited. So he took the original thread and condensed it into just his information, and he edited it and kind of fixed up some, clarified some points. So this is the man himself. Anyway, so I was rereading it, and he brings up the example of male strippers. He's like, because he's talking about that phenomenon, right? He's like, just look at male strippers, these guys will get pretty jacked, and they're all 200 pounds. Maybe the bigger ones are 225. He's like, but they never get bigger, but because they don't put in the work, they don't lift heavy, they sort of get to this one place, and he's like, they're doing more drugs than my guys prepping for bodybuilding shows are.
That's true. Yeah.
And I just think it's hilarious. Yeah, sure. I guess I'll take your word for it, Dante, that what male strippers do.
I don't know anything about male strippers, but I know that if you're in the business of looking pretty, then you don't necessarily need to train to maximize that. There are other ways to look pretty. Steroids are probably the easiest. But then you have plastic surgery that's a little more invasive than steroids. And then now you have Photoshop and what's that app that I use to edit my videos? InShot. There's all these different apps that can make you look pretty. And if you're just doing it on the internet, you might not even have to do very much invasively.
Well, and I can imagine an actor, right? So if you're some in-demand actor and you got to get jacked for a superhero film, you probably, those guys probably have a crazy ass schedule. They're traveling all over the place. They may have intermittent access to gyms and food. And,
they're taking drugs.
Yeah, of course. If you just got to get if you already have great genetics, right? If you already look like Brad Pitt and you just got to put on 10 or 15 pounds of muscle to look great, to look ripped for a movie, then sure, they probably just get on a bunch of drugs and they, maybe fuck around in the gym when they can.
Yeah.
But sure. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Who was it? Hugh Jackman denied steroids recently. They asked him point blank. Then I'm like, well, of course he denied steroids. He's a fucking actor. They're professional liars, first of all. And, why is he going to admit to something that's illegal and socially frowned upon, which it really shouldn't be, because what is their job? Right. Their job is to look a certain way on screen. Yeah. And if steroids make that easier and they're willing to take the risks, by all means, they are trying to look pretty. We are trying to get healthy, strong, and useful. Two different things, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always highlight to people. I'm like, bodybuilding is a appearance contest, and steroids change your appearance more than training does. Nobody wants to say that out loud, but it's fucking true. Now, what Dante was bringing up was these guys don't keep getting bigger, and what I've noticed is a lot of guys don't keep getting stronger.
Yeah,
but in the training realm, you have to figure, eventually you have to troubleshoot. I see guys get on, and then they make linear progress again because they just took drugs, and then they stop making progress. They never figure out how to train. Then they take more drugs, and they get hurt because their form's shitty, and then they stop training altogether, right?
Right.
So that's a whole nother episode that we could talk about this shit on. But my point is that you don't need it. If looking pretty is all you fucking care about, there are other ways to do that rather than killing yourself the way we do,
Right.
I mean, it's a different objective. There's no training for aesthetics. Aesthetic improvements are a byproduct of training, but the percent change in muscle mass for most people, not all, you have very high responders to training, but for middle of the bell curve person, skinny, fat, unathletic or mildly athletic at best. I'd consider myself mildly athletic. I have a 24-inch vertical jump. It's just barely above average.
Right.
But you're going to see an improvement. Your body's going to change. You're going to look better than you did. I always say that you're going to 100% look better than you did without training. You will always look better lifting weights than not lifting weights. But if you want to see like a 20 or 30 or 40% improvement in your appearance, you're coming to the wrong place, And the people selling you that were either born that way or took drugs.
Yes, I agree. And I'll say it a different way. I think a lot of people, when they're asking about aesthetic changes from the program, I think what they're actually wanting to see that can't happen is they want to look like a different person.
Exactly.
And by that I mean, like, they think in their head they've come up with the solution like, yeah, if I just get like more jacked and I lose more fat, or more toned, right, more muscle mass, and they lose more fat, right, and they get leaner, then I'll look like this, and in their head they have this image of someone else. And it's like, no, like, you don't have their bone structure, you don't have their insertions, you don't have their anthropometry. You're just not you're never going to look like that person. It doesn't matter what you do. There's nothing you can do to look like someone else. And I think that's kind of sometimes people, they probably don't think about it that way when they're but that's what it is, and that will literally, there's just absolutely no way. There's no drugs, there's no surgery, there's nothing you can do to get you to that point, to look like someone else. But you can look like a better version of yourself. Absolutely. Anyway, so back
that's a whole nother sociological discussion. But my point is that if you're, the problem is these guys are overrepresented in a lot of mainstream pop culture media publications, and that includes fitness magazines, fitness content, etc. And they'll post up guys that are either naturally very lean or airbrushed to look leaner than they are, or a variety of, they've made them look pretty through means other than training. Let's just put it that way. You have a lot of men and women, the women have been getting this longer than we have, but they just have a lot of humans that have been made to look a certain way without any active effort on their own doing, or very little at best, right? So maybe they are lifting weights, right? But they just kind of look that way. My stepbrother looked that way to begin with. He starts training. He looks just like these guys. If they airbrushed him, he'd look even more ripped, right?
Yeah.
So there's just minimal active effort, and a lot of it is sheer genetics or non-training interventions, plastic surgery, makeup, steroids, lighting, tanning, etc.,
Yeah.
So, in short, none of these supplements are going to do that for you, and training isn't necessarily going to do that for you. We kind of got off onto a different topic there, but it kind of relates, because I think a lot of people see these supplements and they think, I'm going to look like that guy over there if I take this thing over here and this can and do this workout that this dude who looks like that said to do.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way.
It's not going to work that way.
Supplements supplement the diet, and training will add muscle to your body, will get you stronger, will make you look better, but the delta is going to vary across individuals. And the guys that typically respond the best start out in pretty damn good shape to begin with. There's some evidence that they're probably going to do well with this.
Yep, for sure. Well, I'll wrap it up by saying this. The reason supplements are so popular and everybody talks about them is because it's easy to spend money to improve your health and fitness, right? That's like the easiest thing to do. Just go spend some money. Hey, I made a difference. I got a supplement now. But you just spent a bunch of money for a tiny, imperceptible increase in performance, with the exception of the couple things we talked about: caffeine,
right,
creatine. But it's hard to go and add 5 pounds to your squat and drive that up to what you're really capable of, and it's hard to scrape the ceiling of your genetic potential. That takes years of effort. And it's hard, and it never gets easier.
You have to really want to do this.
You got to really want to do it, and it's like we always say, training is for everyone, in the sense that everyone can train, but not everyone is for training.
No,
not everyone is mentally suited to this pursuit, and so it's funny how we could apply that same statement to a lot of different things, right? Like, what does everybody like to talk about in golf? They're like, oh, I just need a new driver. I can't hit my driver for shit. let me get a new driver. You know what? I had a graphite shaft. I need a steel shaft. That was my problem.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Right.
No, it's not.
No.
Your swing sucks. And
Yeah.
you know, what you don't want to admit to yourself, like it's easy to go and spend $400 on a fancy driver. It's hard to go and hit 10,000 drives and figure out your swing.
This could apply to anything.
Yeah.
You know?
So anyway, yeah, then that's the irony, right? Like it might matter to a PGA Tour pro if his pitching wedge is 54 degrees or 53 degrees of loft, right? But it only matters because he's hit like 100,000 pitching wedge shots in his career.
Right.
Right. And if you
Exactly.
haven't done that, it's not going to matter whatsoever for you. So that's the irony.
Not
right?
at all. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's, you want to close this out?
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com, on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. I have a gym here in Phoenix, Weights and Plates Gym. Website is weightsandplatesgym.com or weights _and _plates on Instagram. And I'm starting to put some content out on that page more now.
Yeah,
we're getting busier.
If you haven't followed him, go and follow on Instagram because you've been dropping a lot of interesting videos. Like you kind of hit on a lot of the topics that we touch on in the show, but you know in just short little bites. So it can be fun if you got a friend who's you've been arguing about with diet and fitness and stuff. Then you can link him one of these Instagram videos and get some discussion going in your own little fitness community. You know where to find me at marmalade_cream on Instagram. That's where I post both my lifting and audio pursuits. And if you're interested in online coaching, you can always reach me at jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com. All right, we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.